Have you been struggling with weight loss consistency? Well, chances are, if you're watching this video, that you know what to do in order to lose weight, but that you have not been successful in long-term permanent weight release. Now, here's the thing. There are two things going on. You have a brain that is wired to struggle with your weight, and you also have a brain that is wired to stay consistent and to release weight long-term. But the problem is that you're flip-flopping between these two brains. So in this session, I'm going to teach you 3 key mind strategies that are going to help you stay in this consistent brain and to put this struggle brain into dormancy. My name is Rita Black, and I am a clinical hypnotherapist and the author of the best-selling From Fat to Thin Thinking, Unlock Your Mind for Permanent Weight Loss. And I am also somebody who struggled with my weight up and down the scale, 40 pounds for over 20 years. And in the last 20 plus years, I have helped thousands of other people remove the mental roadblocks that have been keeping them struggling with their weight so that they could release the weight permanently, have confidence, and live life at their ideal weight. So grab the free hypnosis session that I'm offering below, and let's just get started. I want to dig into this because I find this super fascinating, and I know you will too. So here's the thing. I'm going to start our lesson by talking about smoking. I work with smokers and I work in weight management. The reason for that is I was also a former pack-and-a-half-a-day smoker when I struggled with my weight. And crazily, you know, I stopped my pack-and-a-half-a-day habit with hypnosis, and that's how I started to learn about hypnosis and learn about the power of hypnosis for helping our mind to make those deeper changes that are going to reap us the long-term results, right? And so not only was I able to stop smoking, but I was able to stop smoking and release weight and keep it off permanently by just learning to use my mind more effectively. But the reason why I want to talk about smoking is that when I work with smokers, in my exposure to working with smokers and how the smoker brain works, I've recognized that there is very similar patterns between the struggle with smoking and the struggle with weight management, and very similar patterns in freeing yourself from cigarettes and freeing yourself from the weight struggle permanently. So I'm going to talk about smoking because it's a little more clear-cut. When somebody smokes, typically they have a genetic vulnerability for nicotine. That's right. That means that just somewhere in their family lineage, there has been a genetic gene passed along that has created within them a vulnerability for nicotine. Now, some people only smoke a few cigarettes a day. Some people smoke a half a pack, 2 packs, and typically we can look at their genetics and see why, you know, they're a heavier smoker or they're a lighter smoker, or they maybe smoked a couple of cigarettes in their life, said, gross, this is horrible, and never smoked again, right? So there is a genetic component to smoking. And when somebody is a smoker, they'll have that genetic component, but there's something a little more interesting. Then they have their own personal neurological wiring in which you would call the habit, excuse me, the habit of smoking. And so typically when somebody will expect the same amount of cigarettes every single day. So if you're a pack-a-day smoker, you're always a pack-a-day smoker, and your brain actually literally expects you to smoke those 20 cigarettes pretty much at the same times in the same places over the course of your day. So when somebody is smoking, there is this mind-body mechanism that is keeping their smoking habit in play. Now, this mechanism now operates separately from them as a person. They may be even smoking the cigarette and going, this is horrible, this is disgusting, I don't even want to smoke. And yet that part of the brain goes, I don't care if you want to quit smoking, you're going to keep smoking because now this mechanism is in play. So when we're in the smoker struggler brain, the brain is wired for a certain amount. Now, when somebody becomes a non-smoker, what happens is within 48 hours, the nicotine that is priming those neural pathways in the brain. So they have neural pathways that reap a 20 cigarette a day habit. that are primed, those neural pathways are primed or coated with nicotine, within 48 hours, the nicotine falls away and those neural pathways will begin to go dormant. It takes a little while for those neural pathways to go dormant, but they will go dormant. Now, here is the kicker, and something that then we're going to start to look at for you, but those neural pathways never, ever, 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 ever go away. Right. So once somebody is a pack-a-day smoker, like I'm a former pack-and-a-half-day smoker, should I smoke one puff on one cigarette, the neural pathways in my brain would get reignited, and eventually I would go back to smoking as much as I did before. Maybe not a pack and a half, but like a pack, right? So the point I'm making is, once the brain is engaged again, it's not going to just engage with one cigarette and be like, okay, we're fine and we're going to go back to being a non-smoker. No. Once the brain is engaged, it's going to go back to demanding, maybe one cigarette a day for a while, and then two, and then, but it's eventually going to tripwire and fall back into a 20 a day habit. Now, I'm sure if maybe you've know smokers or somebody who has smoked in your life, but you know that this can be very, very frustrating because people will stop smoking all the time. They'll go for a year, and then they go to a party, they go, oh, I can smoke a cigarette because I've stopped for a year, and they smoke, and what next thing you know, they're out in the back smoking again, right? And they're like, why did I do that? That was so stupid. Well, they're not stupid. It's just how the brain works. So now you probably are cottoning on to why I started there, because when we struggle with our weight, we also have a genetic propensity for carbohydrates and sugar. That's right. So typically, somebody who are with food in general, but in like highly reward center hitting foods like fats, but really carbohydrates and sugars hit our brain, hit our tongue, and literally our taste buds get a woo experience when we first get that hit of carbohydrate and sugar, and then it hits our brain in a particular way, and then it also impacts our body. So this is a mind-body duality in a certain way as well, where we're probably more blood sugar sensitive, and then we'll have those crashes that then make us feel more hungry, and then we're eating more. So when we struggle with our weight, we have a genetic propensity to sugar and carbohydrates that maybe your friend or your cousin doesn't have, that they can sit there and eat a croissant or a bag of candy. They can eat 3 bites of candy, and then they put the bag down and they forget that it is even there. Don't you hate those people? I certainly do. No, I don't, but yeah, frustrating, right? Frustrating. So anyway, so there's a normal person, like a normie, and then there's somebody who, is more genetically vulnerable. Does this suck? Yeah, but it is what it is. And once you understand that this exists and probably exists within you, then you can stop beating yourself up about it and just recognize the fact that, oh, I have this genetic propensity, other people have other issues. This is a cross I bear, and yet, from my perspective, my weight mastery journey is the most amazing thing that ever happened to me in my life. So I'm super glad for my genetics, and I'm super glad for everything has happened, because my weight mastery journey allowed me to take back my power and freedom, and in doing so, being my best self, right? And that's what I'm offering you, is like a roadmap to your best self. It's not just about being thin. It really is about being powerful in your life. Now, the second part, other than the genetics, is your wiring. Just like the smokers, you have probably over time wired yourself in a way where there are certain trigger foods that you have that set your brain and body off. And there are certain just circumstances, habits that you have that are now wiring what we would call the struggle part of your brain, right? So, and some people are more extreme than others. And again, does it suck? Yeah, sorry. But once we understand this, again, this gives us our power. This gives us some, it's not your bad and wrong that you've been struggling with your weight. This is just how the brain works. And once we understand how the brain works, then we can have some control over it instead of it controlling us, right? So we have the struggle brain. Now, when you've been eating healthy, when you've lost weight, when you've been, in the zone, the weight loss zone, chances are what's happened is that you started eating in a way where you took your the refined, especially the refined carbohydrate levels down, and you were eating more healthy, nourishing, stabilizing foods, lean proteins and healthy fats and veggies and some fruit and, whatever your healthy eating was. When you started eating in that consistent way, and I'm going to just do C for consistent, you started wiring your brain for consistency, but you also, the neural pathways that were primed with the sugar and carbohydrates, which do act just like drugs in your brain. Even gluten is now seen as like it engages the morphine, like the reward center, and it reacts almost like morphine in the brain. It not as extreme, obviously, but food. The food that we eat, a lot of these foods impact our brain like a drug. And so the priming that is going on these neural pathways, just like with a smoker, within 48 hours, the nicotine dissipates. Within like 3 or 4 days, the carbs, the sugars, the things that are priming our struggle brain begin to dissipate. That's probably why you've noticed if you start eating, clean for a few days, maybe the first day is a little tough, but within 2 or 3 days, first of all, you're not feeling cravings anymore. And and chances are over a period of time, you stop thinking about food at all, except when you need to eat. So it seems like you're in this magical place like that. Oh, wow. Like, it's amazing. I'm not thinking about food and it's easy to eat this way and I'm enjoying it. And so we're in this consistent, what I would call weight mastery brain, right? And life over here works. It's good. We feel powerful and confident. But what happens is that we might get just like the smoker who's like, well, I stopped smoking for a year. I can have a cigarette. We might say, oh, well, I've lost 10 pounds. I'm going to go out and treat myself. And what will happen, now it's not like the smoking, it's not so extreme. Like if you smoke one cigarette, you go back to smoking. And that's why I think it's a little, the subtlety of this is a little why people get so frustrated, is that you can go, so I call this sort of the buffer zone. You can eat some carbohydrates and sugars within here, depending on who you are and how your body and your genetic propensity is. Some people not a lot and some people more. But after a certain amount, what will happen is you'll start to trigger and wake up the carb zombie. I call this part of the brain the carb zombie. And just like when I work with smokers, I call it the cigarette monster. So I call this the carb zombie. And the carb zombie goes to sleep, it goes into hibernation. But once we start eating over what I would call our genetic ceiling for carbs and sugars, we start to wake up our carb zombie. And if you've noticed, after going out and eating a bunch of food or binging or something the next day, you feel hungrier. And that part of your brain seems to have woken up and is like, ooh, I'm looking around for more food. Now I feel hungrier. Now I'm thinking about food more. Now, again, this isn't you. This isn't your personal, it's personal to you. Of course it is. But I want you to understand that it's not your fault. It's just wiring here. And this is just how the brain works. So once we get triggered though, and here's the thing that is really what I see so many people, clients, falling into a trap, is that they will, once they eat something like that wasn't on their healthy plan, is that they'll say, I blew it, let me start again on Monday. So between Friday and Monday, they're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates. And the problem is this part of the brain is getting even more hungry, because now we're completely, like, if we just ate a few things, we might just be over here in this buffer zone. But this, when the brain goes, oh, we blew it, then we'll start eating more refined carbohydrates, and then we will pull ourselves back into the struggle zone, and it becomes very hard to pull ourselves back out. Does this make sense? So your weight struggle has been like, and then you'll pull yourself back together and be eating and go, oh wow, it's so great and I'm doing so good, I'm going to Italy, and then back in the struggle cycle. So what do we do to begin to combat this? Well, one strategy you can use is to honor your genetics. Yeah, simple. Recognize that, for me, I recognize that the food I eat over here, the lean proteins, healthy fats, veggies, fruits, I love eating in this way. I didn't always love eating in this way, but the more I ate this way, the more I enjoyed it, because the more this part of the brain went into dormancy. And then, have you ever noticed when you've been eating healthy for a while and you do eat something that you think, oh, I can't wait, I like to eat that, and you eat it and then you're like, meh, it's not so great as I thought it was. But then still, it doesn't matter because it got into your body, and then, you got tweaked and fell back into the thing. So over here in our consistency brain, life gets better, and when we're eating healthy, but we need to honor our genetics. And what I mean by that is I honor the fact that I know that I have a brain that is wired to eat so many carbohydrates, and I'm very genetically vulnerable to sugar and carbohydrates. So when I eat a carbohydrate, I'm understanding that I'm heading into this zone and that I need to be careful. I need to know, like, okay, I ate that, let me eat healthfully the next day. It's almost like medicine and bringing myself back into equilibrium. I wouldn't, and there have been days, believe me, where I've headed over into the struggle zone, but I don't take it personally. I just go, oh, wow, I've pulled myself in the struggle zone, but I know what to do to get out, which is to begin to eat more healthfully and to put that part of the brain back into dormancy. I hope this makes sense. So honor your genetics. Focus on staying free. Exactly. So that's what I meant, is like, when I'm over here, I have my freedom. So I might look at something really tempting, like, a piece of, like a piece of cake or a bowl of chips. And I will say, well, I could eat that probably, but is that going to jeopardize my freedom? And meaning my freedom of mind, because once this mind gets triggered, I don't have control of my mind anymore. My carb zombie is controlling my mind and thinking about food all the time and running my behaviors and making me feel controlled. I value my freedom way more than I value any of those, treats out there in the world, or carby things that are floating around in our zeitgeist, which, there are plenty, believe me. But once we start to look at those things like that puts me into slavery, I'm not going to eat that. You have a different standpoint rather than it's like good or bad. Ooh, I'm being good, or ooh, I'm being bad. This is wiring here, folks. It's not about being good or bad. It's about being free or being enslaved. And I choose freedom. How about you? Yeah. So then the last strategy is to break the start over thing that pulls us in here. So again, you might eat something like a piece of cake, like you might eat a serving or two of refined carbohydrates, you know, and get pulled, you know, kind of into this buffer zone. And again, the buffer zone is fine as long as you understand, like, let me get back to my healthy eating tomorrow. What you don't want to do is say, I blew it, I'm going to start over tomorrow, and then eat a bunch more, because then you are going to pull yourself over here and get into trouble. So break that tendency to sort of like, I blew it, I'm just going to start over on Monday. It does not serve you, and it does not serve your brain or your body. It keeps you enslaved in the struggle mindset. And we want to live over here in our consistent, powerful, confident mastery mindset. Okay? So I hope this lesson has been helpful for you. I find all of this stuff super fascinating. I hope you do too. Leave your comments below. Grab and enjoy the free hypnosis session below. Hypnosis is a really relaxing mind technique that, like I said, gives your mind a lot more power and focus to achieve whatever objectives you have in life. So here, I love weight mastery and I love smoking cessation. So I hope you enjoy, but have an amazing day, and thank you for being on this lesson. Appreciate it.